Hey everybody, welcome back to our next episode of 6 Feet Under Exhumed. I am Kari the Mortician.
I'm Faith at Mortuary Professor. We have Olivia with us today. Olivia, I think I know how to pronounce your last name, but I'll probably mess it up. So if you don't mind, how do you say your last name? Where do you live? And what do you do?
My last name is Stankiewicz. I
Mhm.
live in Northeast Arkansas. I am a licensed embalmer and funeral director at a local funeral home here. Just finished my apprenticeship just a couple months ago or so, and I attended mortuary school at ASU Mountain Home.
Cool. Thanks for being here with us. We are going to talk about season 3, episode 5. It's called The Trap. And it opens up with a man and a woman walking through, I guess it's the mountains. I don't know what else you would call it, the woods, kind of. And they essentially stumble upon a vehicle and find a skeleton in it. And they put the name on the screen, and it's a man that disappeared in the 70s. So about 25 years ago from what the current time is in the show. So this actually happened to me in New Mexico. However, all they found was a skull.
Like
So
you found the body?
no, 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 no. The funeral
Oh,
home served the funeral home I worked at. We took care of this case.
gotcha.
Not, I didn't find it, but it was a skull that they found of somebody and ended up identifying it as some guy that had been missing for like a very, very long time. It was in the mountains, and we essentially ended up having a funeral and a health for just a skull. So it does
That
happen.
happened here just like a month ago in Jonesboro, Arkansas. There was a guy who died, like he was a soldier, and they found his remains in like South Korea or something, and they sent the remains back and they did a full funeral with full military honors. I didn't get to go, but it was in like the next town over. It was pretty interesting. I read the obituary. I'm like, that's really awesome.
We did
Yeah.
last year, the year before, World War II maybe or something, and they sent back just the
Hmm.
skeleton in a bag and a full uniform and everything for burial. And it was very cool to get to finally lay someone to rest after that long. And we've done missing people that have been found, murder victims found later, and things like that. And we had a mom come in and lay the whole skeleton out into the casket herself
Wow.
for her daughter. It was pretty amazing. But I can only imagine that closure that you, even though there's no closure, I really hate that word, but that finality that maybe you need after so many years of wondering and waiting and then needing to have maybe that tactile moment of placement and stuff. It would be, I don't know, it's probably weird to a lot of people, but I probably would be that person that did that just because of,
I
wondering
would
and
too. I
stuff.
think so. I think we're less like afraid of those things
Yeah.
for sure. But I guess it's better to know what happened
Yeah.
than
And
always
if that's
wonder.
the only way you can hold your child again, I feel like I'm gonna hold it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna hold her femur if that's what I get,
sure.
a thing.
Hmm. Still.
So we've got William Jaffe is the deceased, and this episode brings up so many questions that I think we run into in different scenarios along the way dealing with death. But we go through, we say we have our death scene, and then we go right into some of the storylines. We don't even start into that part quite yet, which is pretty typical. We first go into the art studio where Claire's in class and kind of delve into her relationship with this other student. What's his name? I always
Russell.
Russell, thank you. I put down art student when I do it. It took me forever. And he's asking her to be his date for a wedding. They're still toying with, are we dating? Are we not dating? What's going on? And that kind of happens. And then the art teacher asks her to be his assistant. I'm still like, is he hitting on her? Like, what's going on?
He's really inappropriate and
He's
just
weird.
he's really weird. And I hate this trope of professors. I think I've said this on another episode. I hate this trope of these like super weird, inappropriate, they're just so all-knowing and everything's so meaningful kind of people. And he's definitely one of those where like, he just says the weirdest things and tries to find all this meaning in things that are just, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm not an artist, but I don't know. I'm like, she's just drawing some stuff for an assignment. Like it's not, it's therapy. It's like, trying to psychoanalyze these people
Yeah.
because they're taking like a 101 art class. It's just a little bit much. And he's just, I don't know, he's just kind of icky to me.
Yeah, the whole icky professor thing. Whenever I was working on my first degree, I had a one of my English professors came up to me and was like, "The arts department is looking for nude models. I
Oh,
think you'd be a good fit." I'm like, I didn't.
like what is that criteria? You just want to see me naked is the criteria,
Yeah, I was like,
or
"No, thank you. I'll keep working at Little Caesars. Thank
Oh
you."
my God.
I think I would feel um uh like thank you. That's a lovely compliment,
Get
but
away from me.
yeah.
Oh God. I think if somebody asked me to do that, I'd do it just so they'd regret it.
Yeah,
Like, you need all body types,
here
don't
we
you? This
are.
this this old bag of
Here
skin. They
we
gotta let me
are.
draw that, right? Like, God. No, but he's just creepy and he's weird and I don't know. It's this like it's just this trope, I guess, of it's all this, it's so meaningful, everything's so meaningful and, seeing all these things in everything that this guy kind of does. And he's just a jerk and it's ugh.
Hey, Schmarmy.
Yeah.
Well, then we flash over to the funeral home where we're making arrangements for William Jaffe, and we're meeting with his wife at the time from prior, who is
Yeah.
now remarried because after so much time you can declare someone dead and move on to, be married again. So there was a few like crazy like quotes during this because Dave sometimes does this salesy stuff, which is so talk about schmarmy. And he was talking
Mhm.
about the casket. He's like, I really like this one. He said it's calming, like a slow ride on the Asian.
What?
What does that mean?
I don't know. But for my first question is why are both of them in the selection room?
Always. They always
It's so
tag
Yeah.
weird.
team.
There should that I do not like at all. That is I hate that, especially there should never be more funeral directors in there than there are family members.
Yeah.
Right? One to one is one director's plenty, and I don't know why why always both of them are in that dang room. It's
Yeah, it's
so
either Rico in one of them or them
yeah.
together
What?
always, which is weird.
I've never in my life, other than when I was an apprentice, made arrangements with another director ever.
It would, the times that they do, every once in a while, they'll only one of them, like Nate, I feel like more specifically has done some solo. He always F's up. And I think it's
Yeah,
because, he always like gives stuff away or
yeah,
over schedules or whatever it may be. Because I feel like what was it, the opera singing one that we just did recently, and I feel like only one of them was in that, and it turned into this like big old thing, and it was like, what did you do?
maybe.
Kind of
But that's
moment.
just not realistic. I don't know. I've never ever worked anywhere where multiple even I've done arrangements for governors and, huge things like that. And it was just me. It was never, unless I had an intern or an apprentice, but it was
Yeah.
never like two licensed directors
I don't
making,
I would
even
feel
stay in the
intimidated.
selection room. Like I'm like, these
uh,
caskets do this, these ones do this. I'm gonna let you guys look around. I'll be in that office whenever you're ready.
uh-huh. Yeah, for sure.
But I feel as if we should tell people it's like a ride, slow ride on the Asian is how I feel when I look at this casket.
Mm-mm.
And she's like struggling to try to decide on this casket. And then she's like, oh, and he's Jewish. And it's like, we should have started with that
Yeah, like
information.
a
Yeah, you
reverse.
can see his like disappointment because he knows that it's going to be a simple,
He's like,
inexpensive, likely.
the whatever.
Yeah. Mm.
Like the Samson cedar or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Simeon, that's what we use a lot is the Simeon casket or whatever. But, and you can tell, like, you've got this woman who thought 25 years ago her husband ran out to get milk or whatever it was and abandoned her. And she's going through like all of these emotions. It's not just like somebody died, it's having to go back through almost 25 years worth of what like he was dead and I was angry at him and there's this guilt and then I had to move
Yeah.
on at some point and but he was really dead and I was guilt like I can't even imagine the insane amount of emotions that trying to feel in one like fell swoop of a moment once she finds this all out. And then she's like, boom, here you are. You got to make arrangements now for this
Yeah.
with your husband for your
Yeah.
husband.
She's not his next of kin though anymore, so I wonder why. I mean, I know it's for the storyline, but in that case, wouldn't I mean, I guess you could assume maybe his parents are dead, but she's really not responsible for that.
But would she be? Because technically, she would have been his next of kin.
I don't think so. If he was declared dead, no. I mean, you don't retain responsibility for 25 years for someone.
But she would have been next to kin listed on the death certificate. So technically, I would think she would still be next of kin.
I don't know. I guess that's an answer for someone smarter than us.
Yeah. How does that go? I mean, in this
I don't
case,
know.
it doesn't matter as much because it's not like cremation. Whereas if it was cremation,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
have to ask Sharky on that
Yeah, I
one.
was gonna say
Get
call him
Sharky.
up because I don't know. I feel like she would not be responsible.
Yeah, I mean, it would be he has an adult son now, but
Yeah.
his adult son was a minor when he died. So
I
tech
don't know if it works that way. I really don't know if it goes retroactive or if it's like this is the situation
current
today,
because he's already dead. So the
you
decision would have
know?
been made maybe when, I don't know. Yeah, that's a mind spin.
Yeah.
Like when is the actual death? When he died, when he was declared dead, or current?
I don't know. I wondered if they would like redo a death certificate and like add a place of death or something when they found his body or amend it in some way.
I would think you would
Because
have
they
to,
would have to amend the date, you know what I mean? Or I mean,
and the
it's,
cause.
yeah, because it would be unknown probably. I don't know. I don't know. I can't recall any being ever involved in anything that where someone was declared dead. So I really don't know.
I've never, yeah. Because you would think that they would be able to do like a forensic anthropology autopsy
Yeah.
kind of thing, say died from injuries maybe resulting in the crash, if they could prove that. So then they could go back and say it was an accidental death,
Well, I think at that point they might say
post
undetermined because
trauma.
how they wouldn't know if he like drove
Yeah.
himself off or I don't know. I'm not a pathologist either, but I feel like the point is I would feel like she would not be responsible. She could take responsibility. You can choose to take responsibility, as you know, but I would feel like she would not legally be responsible in this case.
Interesting. We're gonna have to ask a lawyer on this.
Yeah.
Figure this out. But so one other, I can't remember if it's her or if it was Dave that it had to have been her. She said funeral is an empty ritual.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's
Well, a lot of people think that.
they do. They do. Like they're dead. Why are we doing this kind of thing? And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because she's moved on mentally. Maybe to her, it doesn't seem like it needs to happen. Like, why can't we just bury him? But then she feels compelled like she needs to do something because of societal pressure. I don't know. Like just that feeling like you have to do something
Yeah. I
almost.
always wondered kind of this, if funerals were free, would people find value in them?
Oh.
How many, yeah, I don't know the answer, but I wonder, how many people, I don't need that. We don't, that's stupid. That's a waste of whatever. Is it because it costs money or is it because they truly, even if it were free, would not see any value in what we do?
When I think because a funeral doesn't have to be paying a funeral home, gathering
Yeah.
at a funeral home, doing all that. So you can do stuff anytime, even if it's a special dinner to me is like a funeral. It's any ceremonial act of reflecting on a life and honoring a life to me is what funeral is. So that's
Mhm.
why I think we encourage cremation families who have chosen cremation to do something, even if it's outside of us, and it's becoming more popular, I think, to do
Mhm.
like the reception type open house food, gather, talk about the celebration of life type thing where, you stop, reflect, have a moment, and it doesn't have to cost. It can be potluck and everybody come over and you just hang out. So I feel like there is a small portion that feels like it's not worth, or they don't want to because of the emotion that comes with it.
Maybe.
But I think that's an interesting thought.
Mhm.
So Ruth, were you guys as perplexed? Ruth finds this box in the back of the cupboard because she's cleaning. And I'm like, what's going to be in the box? Like, what mind-blowing thing is going to be in this box that Nathan
Yeah.
had hid away? And it's freaking mouse traps.
Straps.
You know what? If you went in the back of my cabinets, I don't know what you'd find.
Yeah.
There's some that I don't haven't looked in 10 years. I don't know. I mean, but it's mouse traps. But yes, it very much felt like it was going to be like something important.
Mind-blowing. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
life-altering because it's in the storyline and it's mousetraps. And
yeah.
yes, it comes up throughout the course of this episode. Still don't understand the point of it. I
Right.
really don't. There must be some existential life big thing that I'm just missing with it. But yeah. So Claire goes down to the prep room where Rico's working, and she's like, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to work anymore because doing removals because of my new position as this assistant, which is amazing. And it's, you know, this once in a lifetime." And she's carrying like this duffel bag, and she like pretends to go throw it at him, and he's like, "What is that?" And she's like, "Oh, it's the bag of bones from the ME." And I'm like,
Yeah. I
Never.
was like, no.
They're not going to mail you a box of bones.
not like that. Like they'll be in a box that's like an official something, or in a bag, or in something that's like medical examiner official. You don't have like this rando bag that is
Oh.
with bones. And bones take up they take up some space. It's not like,
And it was local too. It's not like they found him and he was like shipped as bones to them. Like they're gonna go pick him up from the coroner's office like normal.
yeah.
She was
Well, and
just
that's
hanging
what I
out
think
with the
she had
box.
done, is she
Yeah.
went and picked this box up,
Oh,
and
maybe.
was bringing it back. Like she had completed a removal.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
I don't think they would be released that quickly, my feeling, unless they have a forensic anthropologist that can jump right on that one. But I think it would take a little while. It's not a normal autopsy. It's not a
Mhm.
normal, like you have to wait for that department. So it's going to take a while for them to be released. That doesn't happen that quickly when it's an old case like that. So that's
Mhm.
a no, doesn't happen like that sort of situation. But um, this is when the whole apprentice idea comes about. And he's all excited. He's like, "We don't have to pay him." And I'm like,
That's exactly what my note is. It's like, okay. Well, it's interesting so it's kind of confusing a little bit because he's talking about how they can get a free student to live in and they get credit for it. But they're
yeah,
also calling him an apprentice, which in some states you can do both at the same time. In many you can't. Um, but in my opinion, if he's doing a state apprenticeship, even if he is a student, that's an employee.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and my students all have to do internships in funeral homes as part of the curriculum, and most are paid by the funeral home. That's got nothing to do with us. We don't get involved in that, but most are paid at least minimum wage. Some aren't, and that's they agree to that. But it was just weird. It was like they're free. It's free labor. It's free. And I was like, is it though? I don't know. Should it be?
Yeah.
I don't know. Did
I
you?
was even trying to get into mortuary school. We had to have like 40 volunteer hours even to apply. And even then, like it was so hard to find someone to let me do free work, let alone find someone to pay me.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
at two different funeral homes, for almost, I think it was like 8 months, I did free work. They'd call me when they had a funeral. I'd go help on a funeral just because I was working night shift at a nursing home, and I'm like, I'll take anything mortuary related I can get because I needed it for school. I needed to get
Yeah.
into school. And then once I was in, I needed, my clinical hours. And then I finally got offered a paid position, and I was like, this is glorious. And then
Right.
we run into trouble sometimes with hiring, like if we need like assistance, and I'm just like, why does nobody want the job? I wanted it so bad.
Yeah, it's definitely it's interesting to hear you say that because you're not, I mean, me and Kari, this was a lifetime ago for us, but it's even still now, it's a really interesting thing where it's like everybody to hear that, and I hear that all the time, like they don't even want people to come and shadow or volunteer, but then the complaint is we can't find any employees,
Yeah.
but you're not willing to train anybody or let anybody in or do any of that. So it's just as interesting. Well, what does the employment market want? They want people to
Right.
go to mortuary school, come out knowing everything and anything about everything, require no additional training or knowledge, and then but they still only want to pay a minimum wage. It's a very weird culture.
I remember getting to the point whenever I was just trying to get like my hours to get into mortuary school. I was so desperate. I started calling back funeral homes that had told me no. I was like, I just need to do something in your building. Like I will clean your windows. I will sweep your floors. Like it just has to be in a funeral home, please.
Well, and
It's
that to me
yeah,
is ridiculous. Whenever I hear someone say I'm going to volunteer, I'm like, do not work for free. Like you are working. You
Yeah.
should be getting paid at least minimum wage. And to me, as a business, that is a horrible idea. You have someone at your business that is there off books.
yep, it's
So
liability.
what happens when they're in a car accident, when they're in
Yep.
their vehicles? What happens if they drop a body or drop a casket or piss off a family or lose a valuable jewelry piece or something? They're not even an employee. Like, what are you
Yeah.
going to do? You can't blame them because they're not on book.
Yeah.
So, what's up, people? And then they let them drive the vehicles to wash them or to do whatever. They're not on your insurance. They're not
No,
covered. So, there's
no.
all these red flags to me. And so I'm always like, do not work for free. So I think that is mind blowing that you have to volunteer for 40 hours and they're encouraging free labor and that's mind blowing to me because that is so many red flags. So many
Well,
red flags.
I don't know how it's been a couple years for you, Olivia, right? Like 2 or 3 years.
I graduated in May.
Yeah. So when you were first starting, it was like
Yeah, it's
maybe
been
like 2 or 3 years
almost
ago.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And for and every school and institution, everybody's different. For me, we don't require any experience to apply or any hours. A lot of times I wish we would. But it becomes an equity issue for some institutions because people can't afford to work for free. And so if you're a person, if you have got two applicants, and applicant A, parents support them, spout, whatever it is, and can get those hours easily without being paid. Applicant two has to work full time to not be homeless. That's inequitable, in the education system. It's seen as inequitable to require things like that as a criteria of admission. So we don't. But I will tell you, it's different now, and I think these are conversations that, programs and the employment market need to be honest about because I get a lot from employers. Well, don't you require this? No, I can't require that. That's illegal. Or it's not equitable and there's a lot of equity initiatives in institutions. But I will say, looking at the applicants already that I have for next year, it's concerning to me. I've got almost 100 already applicants. Not a single one has ever worked in a funeral home, volunteered in a funeral home, or been in one, other than to attend a funeral. So the people that are going to mortuary school are not people from family businesses. They're not people that have worked as a assistant for years, nothing like that. They're literally applying to school without ever having any experience in the business. Um, and there's not a lot we can do about it. So it's from the educator side, it's a weird place to be because I understand the value of knowing what you're getting into. I truly believe that, but I'm not allowed to require it.
Mm.
But the majority of people don't have it. So yeah, you're gonna be getting students that have no real experience because
Mhm.
they just decided they wanted to do something with nothing.
What I feel like teaching students, like when they would come to like my mortuary science class, it was like I had to step back a little bit and try to change all my verbiage. I'm thankful I do the videos on social media I do
Yeah.
because I speak in that way in a lot of ways. I take out the mortuary science verbiage that maybe we would use. I don't say the word like beer without explaining what a beer is,
Yeah.
which is the thing that a casket sits on. I don't assume that people know what some of these words mean, where 20 years ago at mortuary school, majority would understand those words. They would have context to
Yeah.
them. They would have practical knowledge of a lot of these different words already, where now this is brand new information to them. They have no idea what you're talking about. So instead of just teaching this, you have to teach all of this up to it, and it adds more to the class and it adds more to what we're doing because you have to start back.
Yeah.
Which is it's a whole different way of thinking. And for funeral directors or funeral home owners, they're kind of in that mindset still that when you come out of mortuary school, you should be ready to jump in there. And there's people who,
You
okay,
can
this is
grant,
my
yeah.
first time moving a casket now and actually
Yeah.
touching a beer and actually seeing a prep table and doing
Yeah.
all these things. And it's like, it's not what it used to be, and it's a hard acceptance on that people are green, they're coming out so green, never having done these things, and you have to start with square one and hold hands a little more and walk alongside a little more, where it used to be, hey, you're here now, okay, you go do that, I'm in the building, it's fine. And that just isn't the way it is, and it's very off-putting, I think, for some people who are used to the latter, and now it's just a different beast, and it's fine. It's just it takes more effort, takes far more work because you're training someone from here instead of from up
Weirdo.
here.
Yeah. When you first started as an apprentice, Olivia, did your place where you started, did they expect that you basically were coming out of school knowing how to be a funeral director, or did they?
No, I started pretty down at the bottom, cleaning the bathrooms, all that, which I still do. I got really, really lucky with once I found this place to work because my boss, he's really, really nice and he's good at teaching things. But I was in mortuary school and I was able to start my apprenticeship at the same time. So while I didn't know a lot of the hands-on stuff. I had been a CNA, so I knew like postmortem care and how to move
Mhm.
decedents and things like
Yeah.
that. But I had a little bit of knowledge, and so that's what kind of got me in the door because he's told me now, it's like whenever I interviewed you for the assistant position, he said you were walking in, I saw you looked like a little girl. He said I was just being nice. And I was just like, okay, yeah, no, she's not gonna work. And he's like, I'll just be nice, see what she has to say. And then he said, you started talking, and he said, I just knew. And he said, and then I really knew once you wrote your first obituary. I handed you a card your first week, and you just wrote an obituary. So a lot of it was just proving myself. And then he just kind of really took me under his wing. And
Yeah.
he's one of those, like, even to this day, like if I have any questions, I can call him in the middle of the night and he'll help me out. So I did get really lucky with on that regard. He kind of helped me build my knowledge from the ground up, which was
Yeah.
nice. I
That's
wasn't
good.
totally green though, because I had been in school a little bit, so I knew some of the terminology and stuff, which helped. But I was really really lucky in that regard.
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
that's good. And there's definitely funeral homes out there that will take the time, and they are, but I feel like there's less and less of them than there used to be. And for a lot of reasons, they're short staffed there, and all of those things are true. Um, but as we see more and more students coming into school with no experience, the other part of it is that I struggle, at least in my program, and that explaining to employers is my students, most of them don't want to work while they're in mortuary school. It's not like us for reasons, I mean, almost everybody in my class when I was in mortuary school was working in a funeral home. Now it's 10% maybe. They don't want to. They want to focus on school. They don't they work somewhere else where they make more money. or whatever reason. So, I get a lot of, do you have any students looking for jobs? I really don't. And they can't believe it. But it's like, yeah, I mean, we have a job posting thing at our institution, but most of them don't want to work while they're in school and we can't make them. So just a different, it's different. I mean, I got like $8 an hour as a student employee, which was more than minimum wage then.
Yeah.
And free living. I lived in the funeral home too. But anymore, my students are making 27, 28 bucks an hour at Starbucks. They're not going to go with full benefits part-time. They're not going to go work for your funeral home for a minimum wage just because they're in school. It's just a different mindset of students that I think the industry is having a hard time with.
I did take a pay cut when I came here, but I think being here is what made me do so well in mortuary school.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like I can hear about embalming all day and raising the carotid artery, but until you're
Yeah.
feeling it and you're raising it, it's that the book means nothing until you've done
Yeah.
it. So I do attribute a lot of my how well I did in mortuary school to being here, and it's worked out for me in the long run because I got a good pay raise once I got
Yeah.
licensed and everything. So I just had to suffer through it a little bit, but it was invaluable, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll absolutely do better in school and you'll do better at work if you're doing both, excuse me, at the same time, no doubt. I just think we're in a different place in the world where, you know,
Oh yeah.
you can make way more money, way less, a lot easier than funeral service.
Yeah.
And so like the idea that I'm just going to do it because it's what I want to do kind of loses things now in 2024 because the fact is you got to pay your rent and
Yeah.
all these things. And it's not, if I didn't have to support, and many students have to support themselves. I can't work for minimum wage. I have to work for $28 an hour at Starbucks, which means I can't work for a funeral home while I'm
Yeah.
in school. And then it's just a million layers to
Yeah.
it. But yeah, in a perfect world, you people would be able to do it and funeral homes would be willing to teach but it's just not where we're at in the industry.
Well, I was hoping in the show when they were going to interview apprentices and we could see like some different wacky personalities, kind of like they
Yeah.
did when they interviewed and
Yeah.
hired the one girl in season one, but
Yeah.
that's not the case. So they say this is going to happen, this is going to solve the problem, and Ruth
One
was
thing interesting, I just want to say real quick before I forget because it's in my notes. Rico's like all excited that they're going to save $10,000 a year. That goes to show you how little money funeral homes actually make. $10,000 a year is a big deal to
Yeah.
funeral homes. And, most funeral homes are independently owned and operated with less than 10 employees. And so when I heard that, I was like, 10 grand a year, big deal. Then I'm like,
yeah.
gosh, that really is funeral service, though. 10 grand a year is like the difference between existing or not.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Ruth kind of gets upset. She's like, this person's going to be living with me.
Yeah.
Like, you guys aren't even asking me, and they're going to be living with me. And that's when they're like, but this is how much we're saving. She's like, okay. Kind
No
of,
rock and roll music though.
no.
Yeah, right? Yeah. But that's like $800 a month. And you just think like to the public that thinks we make all this money, that just goes to show you, no, like $800 a month sometimes is the difference between being open and not,
Yeah.
you
Like,
know?
that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So they flash over to the gay chorus that Dave's singing in, and they're
Yeah.
chatting, and this guy comes up to Dave and he's like, I know who you are. Don't think that, you might pretend that that didn't happen. And he's like, what? And he's like, we hooked up in the bathroom of wherever.
Sears.
Sears. Sears. Of all places. So, and he's like, it wasn't me. And so you're like, I wondered, okay, did this guy get it wrong, or was this during Dave's
Right.
like drugged out crazy phase and he doesn't remember, or is he pretending? Like, I couldn't figure it out. We find out later, and then we jump over to Lisa and Nate. She is driving me nuts. She gets worse and worse and worse. Like,
Ooh.
and she's busting his balls. He's like, well, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm circling the questionable charges that are, or concerning charges that are on our credit card. And
They're just all his.
she's got this big old marker, and I'm like, how large is this credit card thing that it's taking you? It's like you're acting like you're taking hours doing this. Like it would take 4 minutes to go through and circle them. And he's like, well, they're all mine. She's like, yeah, well, you really shouldn't probably do this. She's like, I'm not going to work. And he's like, don't you think that's a conversation we should have together that you're not going to work?
Yeah.
I'm like, these are
I'm just
just red
thinking
flags, guys.
she's
Red flags.
talking about problem expenses and she's not bringing in any money. It
Yeah.
just made me angry.
I we've never shared money, so that's weird to me. I'd be like,
Mm.
we've never shared money, so I don't know what my wife spends, and I don't really care as long as our bills are paid and our agreed upon stuff is met, and that works fine for us. If I want to go to Starbucks every day, I can do that, and there's nobody can tell me I can't, and vice versa. If she wants to go to 7-Eleven every day and buy Monsters, I'm not going to tell her she can't, as long
Yeah.
as the bills are, you know what I mean? As long as
Yeah.
everything we need is needs. So that to me is always like, oh God, I just can't imagine like having somebody that would question every purchase you make. How do you buy them a gift? Like, how do you?
Yeah.
That's
I don't
true.
know.
Don't
It's just
nag at him for a day.
yeah, like how do you? I can't imagine that is very foreign to me to.
Well, and then he goes to like a CD shop later or whatever and wants to buy a CD, like a random,
Yeah.
just one CD. And it's like he goes into this tailspin of a thing where he's picturing like her yelling at him and also, and he's like, never mind, I can't buy it. Never mind, I'm not going to buy it. And just like walks out. That's when I would be carrying cash and
Yeah.
would be buying stuff. And so then she's not going to know because, first of all, I wouldn't be with her if that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I would be starting to get all sorts of sneaky, which should be a red flag to me that that's a bad relationship. But yeah, it just kind of keeps spiraling down. Well, we
Yeah.
get introduced to our apprentice that they hired, and it's just the best casting. I love him so
Yeah.
much. So his name is Arthur, and most people know him now from
The
The
Office.
The
Office.
Office. Yeah.
Because what was his name on The Office?
Dwight
Right.
Thank
Schrute.
you. I knew it when I was watching. I should have wrote down because I'm like, I'm gonna forget that right when I need it. And he talks about how he's homeschooled and stuff. I was like, yeah, you are.
He's very
Dry.
strange, but very kind, I think. And um, I think it's interesting that like Ruth tries to make a meal schedule so they don't have to like be in the kitchen at the same time. And my old ass, I'm like 7 to 8 is very late for dinner.
Yeah, I'm getting ready for bed.
I know. I'm like 5 o'clock is like, what do you mean you get it? You have to wait till 7 to 8 for dinner every night, so you're not in the kitchen at the same time as someone else. But I guess, I mean, it's awkward. Because I guess essentially he's living in their home, right? That's not like a funeral home that has an apartment.
Mhm.
So when I lived in the funeral home, like there was a different kitchen that because there was two apartments and but they had a kitchen that was shared. Um, but it's different than like when I think of living in a funeral home, I don't think of like living in the same house as the family. Usually it's like a separate
Mhm.
apartment.
Yeah, it'd be like them living out above the garage kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
even though there's no kitchen out there. So I mean, I
Well,
guess that's
you'd put one, right? I
yeah.
mean, gonna, yeah. So it was just weird. Like I was like 7 o'clock. That's late.
But they're so formal with each other. Like he really is a male version of Ruth in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Very
Yes.
formal, very proper, the way they speak to each other. His ta like he does this part so
Yeah,
good. It's just amazing. And their interactions with each other is just it's cute.
it is
Love
cute.
him.
They're
Um, let's see. So then we've got William Jeffy's son brings in clothing for him and things to be buried with him. And I kind of liked this. He said, yeah, the funeral director told me maybe I should bury some of his things because it might be therapeutic to put them with his bones. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's kind of a cool idea that these things that you held on of his, rather than throw them out, which you probably never wanted to do, but maybe you don't want them still, you could bury with him. And I think that's what he has brought to do. like the suit, he goes, "Was your dad a little man?" And he's like, "No, but that was his what, christening suit or
Bar mitzvah.
bar
Oh
mitzvah."
yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, that explains it because it was like a small,
Yeah.
it was like for a child or what would that be, a 13-year-old or
Mhm.
whatever." So
Mhm.
I thought that was kind of funny, but I can't imagine being that like he's now an adult and a person that you don't know really or remember and but it's your father. Like, how should I be feeling right now? I'm burying my father, but yet he's not my dad
Yeah.
Yeah.
per se. Like, that's got to be a weird emotion to kind of go through. And we kind of forgot when they met and made arrangements, and the wife was like, he went to the store. Like, do you think he was cheating on me? Do you think he was whatever? And Nate goes, well, maybe. And I was like,
Ugh.
what? Like what? Don't even throw that out there. That just don't entertain the conversation. These are things
Yeah.
that we don't belong having conversation about with the family. Even if they're asking us, that's not really my part. That's not for me to, ponder because we're never going to know probably. Well, why was he there and why was he blah blah blah? And we at the end of the come up with probably why he was there, as we find from later with Nate's thinking and stuff. But don't throw that out and tell her that maybe he was cheating on you 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Like bad professional choices here, Nate.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's sitting there in the funeral home, and then in walks Brenda, who at first I didn't know if it was, I mean, I've watched the show before, but it's been literally 20 years. And I was like, is he imagining this or is she really
Right, right.
there? Because it's like lit all weird, you know what I mean? So like, is he just hallucinating this? But I guess she was really there. Um, and so they go to take the coach for something, I guess it's a mission test or whatever they had. Um, and they're just having like this awkward conversation, and then they decide they're going to go out and have a drink. And so they're at this restaurant, and it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of awkward.
Well, she's going through, I mean, she is in her atonement phase and is
Yeah.
apologizing and
Yeah.
realize she's in her 12-step program and um and then we're watching him pay for this. He has a beer and a like sandwich and she has a soda or something. I don't think
Yeah.
she's drinking,
No.
obviously. But we realize that's why she has kind of reached out to him is because she's in a step of her 12-step program and needs to apologize for things and kind of try and make right. And so, he goes and it's this nice interaction. It's normal. And then he goes home and then of course he tells uh what's her name?
Lisa.
Lisa, which
Well, I mean, what was he supposed to do? Not. Neither way is good.
yeah, but I love that he told her. Like
I do
Yeah.
too.
he's not trying to hide anything and he tells
Yeah.
her, "Hey, because that's what you should do. You should be honest
Yeah.
with your partner." And tells her this and then she's like asking him these questions and she seemingly is okay kind of, but then she finds this receipt in his pocket from the charges and she like loses her shit. I mean, she's all like upset and stuff because it was a drink.
That
Yeah.
made me so
One.
mad because she was like, yeah, no, like she like wasn't happy, but she like they talked about it, and then she finds it later and acts like she'd never seen or heard about this. I'm like,
It
Yeah.
was like she found a
girl,
condom wrapper or something. I mean,
Well, she did say, I'll give her this, and I rarely stick up for Lisa. I don't like her at all. But she did say, now remember, she lives there at the funeral home, like out, like in the carriage house. She was there. And he didn't let her know. He didn't introduce her to Brenda, nothing.
yes.
So it wasn't like he was at the funeral home, she was at their house at a different part of town, and this happened. Like, she was right. He could have very easily let her know before going or introduced her or something because she was literally upstairs. So that's kind of, but also, Brenda's kind of crazy and maybe he didn't know what the hell she was trying to do. So I can see it both ways. But I think it bothered her mostly because she was literally right there. It wasn't like,
Mhm.
she was on the other side of town and this came up.
No, I do give, yeah, I would be upset that he didn't introduce me. But
Hmm.
also, if she caught me off guard in the driveway as I'm getting ready to leave and she shows up, I don't know if I'd have been like, oh, hold please. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go hunt down my wife and my baby because she can't leave the baby and come,
Yeah.
drag her down
Yeah.
here. So I don't know. I can see both ways of thinking. And he's such an easy go with the flow, probably not even worrying about it because he wasn't having bad intentions, but
Yeah.
it would have been good for him to be respectful.
But
Um,
yeah, it was weird that she found the receipt and like broke down even though he told her about it.
I
There
mean, she's
wasn't
like,
anything on there that he didn't
Yeah.
say. So it wasn't like, oh, we had one drink and she found it like a hotel receipt or something, you
Right.
know?
That's what bothered me. I was like, girl, he done told you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. He's kind of
I
a nut.
I think the fact that he used their money to go with her and maybe she didn't realize he used their money and it was kind of like, hey, we just had a talk about this.
Maybe.
And then you took her to have a soda pop without with our money kind of
I
thing.
wonder, I didn't catch how much it was, but it was like a
It was
drink and
like
a coffee.
$12
Yeah,
or
I
something
was like,
like,
please, you can't.
yeah,
Gosh.
it was super nominal to me
Yeah.
in the grand scheme. It's not like
Yeah.
she charged, like when she pulled it out and was looking at it, I was like, oh, what's on it? Like, did he buy
Yeah.
Mhm.
her like this expensive meal? And then I was like,
Yeah.
it's a beer, like a soda or whatever, and like a hot dog or something. I mean, it was
Yeah.
so ridiculously small. And she was like, kind of, it was, yeah, too much, Lisa. Um, then Keith goes, there's this whole interchange with Keith, and I don't know what part it was proving, but he's doing a guard job, and the police show up to the house before they get there. He gets there from the security team, and they're like making fun of him as a security guard. Like, you guys can't even do your job. And this new guy's working, and they go inside, and he's like, see, let's just trash their stuff. Let's drink their stuff. Let's have a drink and let's trash their stuff because they're going to think because that, the
Mhm.
robbers
Think
did it.
somebody.
And, they don't deserve this much money. They're not even here. They don't even care. So they start to do it. And then Keith's like, what the heck are we doing? Like, and he gets on the guy and starts like pounding on him to get him to stop. And it's like this weird, like, are we trying to show that Keith is still that person that flips out or
Yeah, I think so. I mean, first of all, in the time before cameras that were everywhere.
right,
Because you're going to sit in somebody's house and like fuck with their stuff and drink their alcohol. You can't, most houses have some kind of cameras now that, you could never
right.
do this now. So that was my first thought. And second of all, yeah, I think he's upset because he was made fun of by the police. And I do think it's still showing that he does have, I don't want to say violent tendencies, but anger issues or whatever you want to call it. Um, eh, but yeah, I mean, he's not happy with how the guy's behaving and basically like, I don't want to say attacks him, but you
He
know,
does, he like jumps on him
yeah.
and has him on the ground and yeah, I don't know the whole like why that was there. I don't think we ever really find out. Like, what did you think, Olivia? Did you think it had
I think it was just kind of randomly in there. I was like, I don't understand what this is contributing to the episode other than he's just angry or repressed something. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah,
at first I kind of thought there was gonna be like a little romance
I
thing
did
going. I
too.
was like, wait, they're both gonna cheat on each other at the same time? Because this like Dave and the Sears guy were talking earlier, and I was like, no. But then he just beat the crap out of him.
it was
I was like,
like,
well, that was
huh,
unexpected.
I think it's showing maybe like that he's embarrassed that he's no longer a police officer and he's like,
Yeah.
has reduced to being a security guard, but also this is why. Because
Yeah.
he's
yeah.
behaving this way, and
Because the guy asked him, were you a police
yeah,
officer? And he says no.
yeah,
Right.
And so I think, like you said, maybe it's a shame thing, and then
yeah.
it just triggers something in him.
Hmm.
And that does bring up the point. Yeah, the later there is an interchange where Nate goes up to the Sears guy where I don't remember if that was this episode or not. I think it was
It
where
it is, yeah.
he goes up and he says, that was me in a different life. And he goes, I know it was you, but we've all been there. And he's like, well, have you ever been with another guy in Sears? And he's like, yeah, like 6 times.
Ah,
And Nate's like, well, that was my first. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
um, which is kind of funny. Well, we go to the funeral of William Jaffe, and the guys have corsages on. I don't know why, but I made a note of that Nate and Dave both had on corsages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
I would,
count,
that's strange.
it's less than a dozen times I've had a funeral where they've ordered corsages for the pallbearers, and I will tell you, there is often a Southern connection.
We did it every time in New Mexico because our florist gave it to us for free.
We
Yeah.
always have them for pallbearers, but it was
Yeah.
weird to see them on the
Not for
funeral
the staff.
directors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've
We
had
always had them.
pallbearers we less than a dozen times in my career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's not
But
a
we did it
thing
every
here.
time.
We do it every time for pallbearers and the minister.
Yeah, we don't. Isn't that weird? But it's a southern, like, because you're down in
Yeah.
Arkansas, it's a southern thing. There's usually a southern connection somewhere that somebody in the family, and they're like, oh, we've got to do this. And I'm like, huh, you don't have to, but okay.
Right. I like doing it so I can point them out because sometimes we try to sit them on a pallbearer pew, but sometimes they want to sit all with the family. So I remember who's the pallbearers
Yeah.
for ushering out because they got
Yeah.
the flower.
I just hated putting them on because nobody knows how to put them on. And now I see they make them with like a safety pin on the back or like a magnet. We didn't have those. Not in New Mexico in the
We still
2000s.
just pin them.
Yes.
I get tired. It's always don't poke me.
Yeah. I hate
I
those
feel like
things.
that's my intent. Thank you for.
Yeah.
I am
And no
now.
matter what, like you do, they'd always like be like,
Yes.
well, they've they have improved the technology of the boutonniere pinning apparently now.
I thought
Um,
it was odd that they had those on in the episode. And I'm like,
yeah,
did they always? So now I'm like going back in my mind,
I
like
think
thinking
they
to
do a
other
lot,
funerals
but I
and
don't know. I
well,
really don't know.
what I love, so they're showing and they've got a big blown up picture of this guy, and I was like, is that is that? And then they show he is alive, standing there talking to Nate because
Yeah,
Nate
we haven't
always is
seen that in a
talking to
while.
the ghost. And it's Joshua Radnor from what is it? Who not Who Married Your Mother? What's the name of it?
How I Met Your Mother.
Thank you, How I Met Your Mother. And I just love him. And so I was like, oh, yay, it's him. And he's talking and having this conversation with Nate about, um, sometimes if things aren't going great and you just need to get away and you drive. And so then Nate kind of like gets what
Mhm.
happened and that he just went out for a long drive because him and the wife had been fighting and just aren't getting along. And so he needed a break. And what do? You go to the store to get something nominal and you just go drive longer. And so they show Nate later. He's out just driving, smoking a cigarette and just driving around, doing whatever. And then you kind of realize like that's what the guy had been doing and just something happened and he went off the road because it was a curvy, windy road or whatever and went into the ravine
Yeah,
gully thing and crashed and died. I wanted him to like tell the wife though, like, hey, maybe he just needed, that's why he was driving instead of letting her think that he
Yeah.
was cheating on her. But he didn't.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know that there's a good. I don't know that that would be better because then it's like, why did he get to leave and I didn't? You know,
Yeah, I don't know.
it's
But
just there's nothing about that situation is going to make you feel good. I don't
no.
think. I don't know, but I liked it how David was saying he's hungover at the service. Have you ever been hungover at a funeral?
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
Yes,
It's
indeed.
no fun. It's really no fun. You have to be on point for a funeral. Like you're puppet mastering all these different parts and pieces. You can't just sit in the back and not be present, not be on your game. It just doesn't work. And so that is that or just being sick where you
Yeah.
really
Uh,
feel like crap and you
Yeah.
don't want to be there and no amount of coffee, NyQuil, anything is going to make you better. Or you got the poops
Oh yeah.
and you have to work a funeral, especially if you're like on a graveside and there's no toilet,
Oh
or you're at a
yes.
church that has one
I
toilet.
knew where the closest bathroom was to every cemetery that didn't have a porta potty.
I remember being
No,
pregnant going to cemeteries
yes.
and there's no
It's the
bathrooms
worst.
and you have to pee all the time. And it's like,
I That's one thing about funeral service. Like it's not you don't just call in sick. I can't tell you
No.
how many times. I mean, I don't I don't know, probably less than 5 times in 20 years did I call in sick because there's nobody else. What are you going to do? Cancel the
Right.
funeral? Like there's not another option.
Just hope your
So you
sickness
do.
falls on a day where there's no service.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you still gotta,
Can
and
I
so the
plan this
amount,
out that I'm going to have, on
yeah.
this day?
Yeah.
The amount of services that we work sicker than you can imagine or pregnant. One I had hyperemesis so bad. I was literally the poor people that were working the service with me, I bet they remember this. One time I was pushing the casket out in recession after mass and I literally stopped and puked in the church bushes. Everybody behind me. Because when you're pregnant, if you, you can't, there's no warning. It's like all of a sudden I'm normal, now I'm vomiting. That's how it was for me. And then also I had to go get my blood drawn once, and like I didn't know that they were going to take like 5 liters of blood when you're pregnant, and they take so much blood. So I went to church, passed out in the narthex, just out cold. I mean, I mean, there's no option. We have to go
Mm.
do it no matter how we're feeling. And so him being hungover was his own fault, but it just reminded me of all the times that I've worked services when I really probably shouldn't have and was spreading God knows what to everybody. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and people look at you like, well, why are you here? Like, I
because
don't
if
want
I'm not, we don't have a funeral, then you're
Yeah,
going to be
you wanted a
mad.
funeral and we're doing the dang funeral. It's
Yeah.
happening.
Because what if I called you and said, I'm sick today. Can we reschedule the funeral? That would not be acceptable.
doesn't work that way.
My favorite is
Yes.
when families are like, what if it rains that day?
Then you bring an umbrella.
We're having a funeral in the rain.
Yeah, like
We're carrying on, people.
we
Carrying
are.
on.
Did you
Yes.
ever have a mouse in the funeral home though? Because of
Bats.
Had snakes.
snakes. We had a mouse once, and it was the funniest thing because like it was everybody would just freak out, and like the office ladies, they'd be like standing on their chairs screaming, and like it was this whole big thing for like 3 days. This mouse was in the funeral home, and it was just so funny because it was like this is a funeral home, but like if you see the mouse, like everybody like freaks out. And then there was a pre-need guy, and he was having a pre-need appointment, and he came out of his appointment, and he was like, a mouse just ran across my client's shoes, but she didn't see it. So it was just, I don't know, it was just really funny because like the whole funeral home was up in arms over like this mouse, but like we got dead people in the back, but we're afraid of a mouse.
Fine.
So
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's fine.
yeah. Never had a snake or a bat. How'd you get a bat in there?
It came in on one of the plants that was up by the casket, and they came up to me at visitation and somebody and they said, so there was a bat on the plant up by the head of the casket. And I was like, huh, that's new. So we went up. This funeral home in particular got a lot of bats. Had one, it was a very old house, had a big old, attic, and we
Yeah.
had tried to, you try and close every hole, but they get in
Oh
a
yeah.
like
They're
this.
tiny. I mean, they're like
Then
mice with wings.
they'd come down, and it was a low chapel ceiling. It's not like a big open room. It was a very low chapel ceiling. And so if there's swinging around in there or flying around in there, it's in your face. So we go up to the casket and we're looking, and I'm like, huh, well, we can either just take the chance that thing is taken off during visitation, or we can do something about it. I probably should have just left it until the end of visitation. At this point, we were literally in the middle, so we were probably an hour in, still had an hour to go. I probably should have just left it alone. But my luck, like little Hazel's going to go up and look at the flower card,
Oh yeah.
one plant, and it's going to take off in her face. So I said, I'm just going to get a sheet. We'll throw the
Yep.
sheet over this thing.
That's what I would have done.
No big deal. Nope, the bat, as soon as the sheet went up,
It flew out.
came out. You turned, and this was one of those big, long visitation rooms. You could see through the middle. Everyone went whoosh and flies out to each side, and this thing goes shooting out. It didn't take us long to get it out of the building because once you get it to the one end, you just block the doors and it'll go out the front door.
Uh-huh.
And so, but oh my gosh, it was absolutely hysterical just because everyone dove off to the sides as this bat comes flying through the middle. And I couldn't even tell you whose visitation it was. I couldn't tell you anything. I just remember the dang bat. And it was so
Oh gosh.
funny how it happened. I'm sure they don't find it as humorous. Maybe they do because they
Maybe they
wanted a
do.
moment of
I mean,
levity.
what are you gonna do?
But I was
Yeah.
like, what are the freaking chances? I don't know how they saw it. This thing was
Yeah,
so
with a little
small.
thing.
You know, they ball up and it was all
Uh-huh.
clustered up into this plant. I don't know how they even saw that it was there. But yeah, we had a bat in the visitation. We had had numerous where we got them out, but it was never during a visitation.
Well.
And there we go. So there ends our episode 5, our introduction to Arthur, our super dry, boring, lovely apprentice who is
He
going to be
is.
around for a couple episodes, and we love him and
Yeah.
his relationship with Ruth and kind of watching how they become acquaintances living together in the same house because they finally are like, well, maybe we could eat together. And he's like,
Yeah.
that would be lovely. That would be lovely.
It's kind of, I mean, part of me is like, I guess he's just a weird dude, but I'm like, God, are they making him weird on purpose?
He's so good at it.
I know.
That character could be a serial killer. Like
Well,
that's
I know, but
how
that's what I mean. Like,
Easily.
are they
Easily.
doing it to like make him somebody that like Ruth gets along with, or are they doing it to like play up the fact that he's a mortuary science student and that's what they're like? Because I don't like that.
oh, like we are supposed to be dry and
Yeah, like he's a
weird
mortuary
and
science student, so of course he's weird. Like,
Yeah.
improper.
yeah.
Well, and
All
he's
right.
homeschooled. Later,
Well, that's
in
true.
later episodes, he alludes to maybe he's Mormon. I feel like he says you're on your mission to his cousins or something, and I can't.
Oh yeah, you're right. He does say
And
that.
the way that he phrased it and some of it, I was like, oh, I wonder if it's they're Mormon and they're out on their, I don't know what that's
Yeah,
called,
I think you're right.
where the two
Their
guys go
mission. Yeah.
together and then, a year
Hmm.
later, it's a year long, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's what it made me think of. Whether it was or not, I don't know. But so I'm like, not that being Mormon means that's how you are either.
Well, you
But
can be Mormon and be a mortuary science student and also be weird and they're not related. And
yeah,
maybe that and that's what I hope. I just kind of hope that they weren't making him extra weird because he's a mortuary science student because you know how I feel
we're weird
about that.
enough, right? Come
I
on.
Right.
mean, yeah, but I don't know that whole like you know how I feel about that stuff. Like
I know.
or individual people, but you can absolutely be weird and a funeral director or a mortician. But you're probably not weird because you are one,
Legit.
right?
What came
I don't
first,
know.
chicken or egg, right?
Yep.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. Thanks to Olivia, our newly licensed, used to be an apprentice, to join us for the apprentice episode. Catch us next time for episode 6 next week. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.